Welcome back to the third part of our series on President Park Chung-hee's assassination. This is Sanjay Sharma and you are tuned to our special program Reading Korea in Rhythm. In the first two parts, we talked about various assassination attempts on President Park's life and the profiles of the people involved in the incident. Our next question was about the trigger that led to this incident. As I said, we need to peel the layers to connect four critical dots, that is, the political climate in the country, the events of the day, the dinner table talk, and finally the ultimate trigger. So let's begin with the first dot, which is political climate. From 1972 to 1979, President Park governed Chesa Kongbuk, or the Fourth Republic, by Yushin Hanpop or Shiwal Yushin, meaning the Yushin Constitution, also known as October Restoration. Here, for language enthusiasts, Yushin means rejuvenation or renewal. It has the same Chinese character of restoration as in Japanese Meiji Ishin, meaning Meiji Restoration. And this is when the real story unfolds. Frankly speaking, given its critical importance, the Yushin Constitution deserves a dedicated episode, but for a quick reference in the context, I would focus on its salient features that will give you a crystal clear idea about its raison d'etre. Adopted in October 1972 and confirmed in a referendum in the following month, it gave enormous powers to President Park, as mentioned earlier in the first part. It abolished direct vote for presidential elections and replaced it with indirect voting system involving delegates. Secondly, it allotted 1/3 of the National Assembly seats to the president. Third, it gave the president the authority to issue emergency decrees and suspend the constitution. Fourth, it gave the president the authority to appoint all judges and dismiss the National Assembly. And finally, it repealed a term limit to presidency. Now, let's slow down here as we confront a critical issue in political philosophy. Allow the inquisitive mind, rational being, and responsible citizen within and respond to this. Who do you think would like to be governed by Yushin Constitution? Take a moment to think about it. This critical question has always been in the center of a complex discussion on du contrat social, or principe du droit politique, meaning social contract, within the realm of moral and political philosophy that also became the focal point during the Age of Enlightenment. Discarding the divine rights of the ruler way behind, the social contract theory has been on the forefront 24/7 on the issue of legitimacy of the authority of the state over individuals and protection of natural and legal rights, including freedom, dissent, and people's consent, explicit or tacit. In antiquity, one could see the rules, regulations, and procedures laid to govern the Sangha, or the Buddhist monastic communities, in the Vinaya Pitak, one of the three main categories of Buddhist scriptures: Sutta Pitak, Vinaya Pitak, and Abhidhamma Pitak, collectively known as Tripitak, meaning triple basket. As for Roman law and Greek and Stoic philosophy, the concept of social contract appears prominently not only in Plato's famous work, The Republic, and later in his dialogue Crito, but also in the discourse on why Socrates refused to leave Athens, even if that meant losing his life. In the modern political theory, this leading doctrine of political legitimacy that we call the social contract has been dealt at length by the trinity of Hobbes, Locke, and Rousseau. Thomas Hobbes was an advocate of an absolute authority of the state as depicted in his famous work Leviathan. John Locke wanted a commitment by the state on the protection of life, liberty, and property. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau placed utmost importance on general will of the people. So back to our question, who do you think would like to be governed by this Yushin Constitution in the light of the social contract theory? Well, as you see, while this Yushin constitution on one hand made President Park virtually omnipotent, just like in Hobbes' Leviathan, on the other hand, it made ordinary citizens miserably vulnerable and hopeless, stirring social unrest. Protesters from all walks of life, like college students, artists, religious leaders, and the opposition, of course, came out on the street. But the authoritarian regime brutally suppressed them, executing many innocent people for treason. Taking the cognizance of this blatant human rights abuse, the Carter administration had to issue a warning that the US military forces might be withdrawn from South Korea if President Park continued his brutal modus operandi. Democratic protests that took place between 16th and 20th October 1979, just a week before the assassination, are known as Puma Sathe, or the Puma protests, where Pu stands for Busan City, Ma for Masan, which is now known as Changwon City. The expulsion of opposition leader Mr. Kim Yong-sam from the National Assembly for the continuous criticism of the Park regime further fueled these protests. Now that we talk about Mr. Kim Yong-sam, it is important to be familiar with the three prominent Kims. No. Not the North Korean Kim dynasty of Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Jong-un, but the legendary Kims from South Korea, without whom the story of modern Korea is virtually incomplete. So first, Kim Yong-sam. He was the most powerful rival to the authoritarian regimes of President Park Chung-hee and later Chun Doo-han, became the first civilian president after spending almost 30 years in opposition. His term was known for its anti-corruption campaign, Segewa Chongchek, or the globalization policy, and the arrest of his two predecessors, Chun Doo-han and No Tae-woo, for corruption and treason for their role in military coup. The second Kim was Mr. Kim Dae-jung, who experienced way too many twists and turns in his life before becoming the president. He was the only Korean recipient of a Nobel Prize to date for his work on democracy, human rights, and his Taebok-hwahae Hyomnyok Changchek, meaning reconciliation and cooperation policy towards North Korea, also known as the Sunshine Policy or Happy Changchek. On 8th August 1973, while in exile in Japan, just like in any thriller from Hollywood or Bollywood, KCI agents kidnapped him from a hotel in Tokyo, tied him up, blindfolded, stuffed his mouth, took him to a boat, and were about to throw him overboard when a patrol plane saved him in the nick of time. The reason? Well, he criticized the Yushin Constitution. The Japanese government took a very hard stand on this clandestine operation. But after the 15th August 1974 assassination attempt on President Park by an ethnic Korean from Japan, the Korean government turned the table, blaming Japan for being a nation that allowed terrorists to flourish on its soil and possess not only a gun but also a Japanese passport. This enabled the Korean government hit two birds with one stone. It forced the Japanese government to rein in anti-South Korean activities and dismiss the kidnapping case of Mr. Kim Dae-jung. Now, if you by any chance collect textbook cases on ironies in life, this one is for you. In 1980, Mr. Kim Dae-jung was sentenced to death on sedition charges and conspiracy during the Chun Doo-han regime, but was later given refuge in the US. 16 years later, their fate reversed when President Chun Doo-han was sentenced to death in 1996 for his role in the Gwangju massacre and was later pardoned on the advice of the same Kim Dae-jung, the then president-elect. This reminds me of that movie Forrest Gump. Life indeed is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. Finally, the third name in the trinity is Mr. Kim Jong-il, the 72nd generation descendant of the King Kim Suro. You remember the legend of Indian princess marrying King Kim Suro? Yes, he was from that lineage. He was the founder of KCIA and the Democratic Republican Party, Minju Khungadang, architect of President Park's military coup, chief negotiator in the Korea-Japan relationship normalization process that led to a 1965 treaty, and two-time prime minister. He was married to the niece of President Park, so he had a family relationship with him. Though he could not become the president of Korea like the other two Kims, given the political equations at the time, he was sans doute one of the most powerful politicians in the modern history of Korea. Well, so after this a brief introduction of the political climate and prominent leaders, we move to the second dot, the events of the day. There were two events on the day that President Park attended. First was Sapkecheon Pangjoji Hengsa, or Sapkecheon Seawall inauguration in Asan Bay. And then he was to visit a KBS TV station for inauguration. And Kim Jae-Kyu, the KCIA chief, was expected to accompany him since the TV station was under KCIA jurisdiction. But Security Chief Cha Ji-chul did not allow him to fly in the same helicopter with President Park. Angry and humiliated, KCIA head Kim Jae-Kyu chose not to join at all. He felt this kind of treatment was possible only with the tacit approval of President Park. After these events, President Park wanted to discuss the prevailing political situation with his core team of Security Chief Cha Ji-chul, KCI Chief Kim Jae-Kyu, and Presidential Secretary Kim Kye-won over a banquet. Such banquets were quite frequent and would be organized on average almost every third day or so. So, in fact, there was nothing unusual about it on that day. You remember I mentioned that KCIA Chief Kim Jae-Kyu would normally be the one to host all such parties for the president. When he was informed about the banquet at 4 p.m., he called Korean Chief of Army Staff Chung Sung-hwa for dinner, which he fixed with KCIA Deputy Director Kim Jong-seok in the nearby Yeonijang Nadong Banquet Hall, which is about 50 meters from the main dining hall in the same KCIA compound. Now, this is interesting. Prior to the dinner, reflecting on the day, KCIA Chief Kim Jae-Kyu told Presidential Secretary Kim Kye-won at the venue around 5:40 p.m. And I quote, 부마 사태를 폭동 진압하듯 무조건 누르면 부산 시민이 다 일어나 봉기한다. 공화당도 자지철이 무서워 대통령께 빠른 말을 못하고 있다. 이놈은 오늘 없애버려야겠다. He said, if you suppress the Puma protests like a riot, all the citizens of Busan will rise up against the regime. The Republican Party members too are so afraid of Security Chief Cha Ji-chul that they cannot communicate the real situation to the president. I'm going to eliminate this guy today. There are speculations if Presidential Secretary Kim Kye-won misheard this or simply did not take it seriously because it came out of the blue. Later, narrating the incident to Kim Jong-pil, the third Kim we just talked about, Kim Kye-won clarified that he thought by saying, I'm going to eliminate this guy, Kim Jae-Kyu meant I must confront or get angry at him, meaning 한번 혼내줘야겠다. Now, let's take a pause here to extract something very critical on leadership skills from this brief anecdote. This frustration of Kim Jae-Kyu of not being heard, let alone understood by the president on his candid assessment of the current political turmoil, and the humiliation by Cha Ji-chul by not letting him fly with the president reminds me of a famous lines by a 15th century Indian mystic poet Kabir Das. And I quote, Nindak nire rakhiye angan kuti chabaye, bin pani sabun bina nirmal kare subhai. Unquote. It means that a person who can pinpoint at our shortcomings, inadequacies, or lacuna without fear or ulterior motives is like a cleanser without soap and water. He should be cherished dearly and kept nearest possible, since by drawing our attention to the fault lines in our personality, behavior, or actions, he paves the way for our improvement that can result in our self-actualization that Abraham Maslow talks about. This is something no sycophant or yes man can ever offer. This case study seems to suggest whenever key advisors are not allowed to speak their minds freely, then the leadership is doomed, since it stifles all possibilities of course corrections required for growth or prosperity in the organization or nation. It also appears to denote that such myopic policy decisions by ambitious leaders fixated on arbitrary changes in the modes and modalities of management to acquire tight grip over power at any cost and unnecessary meddling into individual or social matters ultimately result in fiasco and lead the organization or nation off the course in no time. So, how was the day for the women? Model Shin Jae-sun, after her short-lived married life and divorce at a rather young age, was trying her luck for a modeling contract and in the process was recently introduced by a mutual acquaintance to KCI chief agent Park Sun-ho, who assured her of help with his network. Within a few days of this introduction, when he called her on 25th October, just a day before the incident, she must have felt on cloud 9, believing that this high-profile network would finally enable her to realize her dream. But how would she know that instead, destiny assigned her an unasked for role in a high-voltage drama in the next 24 hours? Park Sun-ho fixed this appointment to meet at Plaza Hotel coffee shop at around 5:30 p.m. on 26 October to join a dinner party, without revealing where and with whom. As per the appointment, she was picked up from the hotel and taken to another hotel, New Neja Hotel, where the other girl, singer Shim Subong, was asked to wait. Singer Shim Subong on that day had a schedule to record at TBC broadcasting studio for a popular program Show. When she got a message from the presidential palace Cheongwade to be ready at around 5:30 p.m. to be picked from New Neja Hotel to join a dinner party, and was also asked to bring her guitar. Her appointment with the recording studio was already cancelled by the person who called her. Recalling the moment, she says, just imagine when you get a call like that from none other than the presidential palace, and that too of an authoritarian regime, all you do is just to follow the command without asking any questions. And that's what she did. This was going to be her third time to meet the president. Earlier, she had the opportunities to see him in a group with other performers. She was seeing KCI Chief Kim Jae-Kyu's second time and Presidential Secretary Kim Ki-won for the first time. As per the standard protocol, prior to joining the dinner, both of them were briefed by Security Chief Cha Ji-chul on the etiquettes of such a high-profile meeting, as well as on the confidentiality of the discussion that they were about to be a part of. They were instructed that no information should be shared with anyone under any circumstances, no matter what. What was about to unfold in the next few minutes was simply beyond anybody's imagination, let alone of these two women. And now the third dot in the picture takes us to ground zero, the dinner table talk. In my opinion, what captures and depicts the exact punigi or ambience about the dinner table talk is one of the articles in Jungang-ilbo newspaper in 2015. It was around 6 p.m. when President Park arrived at the venue, accompanied by Cha Ji-chul. He appeared to be in a ruminating and stern mood. As soon as he sat down, he blasted with full force at KCI Chief Kim Jae-Kyu, and I quote, "재규, 너 시간이 지날수록 참 실망스러운 인물이야. 뭐야? 너 뭐 한다고 맨날 돈 달력만 하고 정보부 예산 무한정 쓰면서 부마 사태를 수습하고 진압한다고 했잖아. 이것저것 다 할 수 있다더니 제대로 한 게 뭐야? 왜 그 모양이야? 그러고도 무슨 변명할 거리가 있어?" Wow. I don't think I could dramatize it adequately enough. But given my little understanding of how these words must have been spoken, with their thrust and nuances, I can only imagine it must have been pretty heavy on Kim Jae-Kyu. Just imagine President Park scolding and questioning his capability in an ultra scornful tone in front of colleagues. Jae-Kyu, day by day you have disappointed me a lot. What have you been doing? All you do is just spend money every day. You said you are using the budget of the Ministry of Intelligence to handle and suppress the Puma protests. You said you could do everything. What have you done right? Why is it the way it is, and what excuse do you have? If this is how the dinner talk was to start, then it was not all that hard to anticipate what was to come next. In the waiting room, when somebody would open the door to either enter or leave, the women could hear the rising voices of Security Chief Cha Ji-chul and KCIA Chief Kim Jae-Kyu. It was perhaps around this moment that they were asked to join. Upon entering the dining room and greetings, the first thing singer Shim Subong noticed was that the room was literally screaming of heightened unease and negativity all around, even though superficially all appeared just normal. All faces looked stern and strained, especially KCI Chief Kim Jae-Kyu and Presidential Secretary Kim K-won. Both looked virtually like robots. Now, for those of us who are into communication behavior studies, here is an observation on power dynamics. The seating arrangement itself, whether just by default or design, was loud and clear in demarcating the attendees as being the right hand or the opponent. Visualize this. On one side of the dinner table was President Park, with singer Shim Subong on his left and model Shin Jae-sun on his right. On the opposite side of the table were KCIA head Kim Jae-Kyu and Presidential Secretary Kim K-won. The fourth man, Security Chief Cha Ji-chul, was sitting on the right-hand side of the president. Here is a thought experiment for us. The left side of the table was vacant. Do you think it would have made any impact on the dynamics and direction of the discussion if KCIA head Kim Jae-Kyu would have moved to the vacant side to balance the space, or if he were on the right-hand side of the president? Prior to the girls' entry, they were all sitting separately on individual sides of the table. Well, the dinner menu, as I initially mentioned, was supposed to be a sumptuous meal, but according to singer Shim Subong, a glance over the dinner table captured nothing sumptuous about it. What they had was largely vegetables, herbs like ginseng, and of course the favorite bottles of Chivas Regal. Maybe it was so, or maybe the overall ambience was so stressful for her that she could not notice the menu properly. We don't know. I don't know. Unbeknownst to the gravity of what was to come soon, both of these girls waited for further instructions, while President Park was anxiously waiting for the 7 p.m. TV news.
I wonder what was so significant about the 7 p.m. news.
Well, this is going to take us to the fourth dot, which is the final trigger. Let's take a pause here and meet again in the fourth part of our episode to discuss this high voltage drama. So take good care and see you soon in the next part. This is Sanjay Sharma, and you are enjoying our special program, Reading Korea in Rhythm.